Economists have been lying to us for centuries. They told us that it all began with barter, then followed money, and finally we get to credit and debt. But that's complete BS, and this is why. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chronicles of Economics, where we try to understand our current economic system by looking back at where we came from. Today we are diving into a topic that's been ingrained into our economic thinking for centuries, most notably by Adam Smith in his book The Wealth of Nations, the myth of barter economies. You probably heard it a million times before. Before money, people lived in barter economies. That was pretty inconvenient, that's why we developed money to make things or transactions easier, and our teachers, parents, grandparents, and pretty much everyone on this planet has been brainwashed to believe this. But what if I told you that this narrative is false? Explorers from the 17th and 18th century found no economy that was based on barter. None of them found the promised barterland. But economists couldn't accept this and quickly erased these findings from official books and papers. So, why do economists hold to their story that markets evolved from barter, then used money, and finally transitioned to debt and credit that we're used to? So let's first look back at Adam Smith and his book and what he wrote to get a general understanding of what's going on here. Adam Smith creates a very, very compelling story about the economy, starting with the division of labor. He states that specialization allows workers to become highly skilled in a narrow field, leading to greater efficiency and productivity. He continues with one of his most famous examples in his book, The Pin Factory. In this pin factory, he describes that the factory can be much more efficient if the processes are understood and divided across multiple people that specialized in distinct parts of it. They become experts in these fields, and this allows to increase the output of the factory. He then projects this example of the factory to the whole economy as a natural transgression to which markets evolve. He states that the division of labor is not planned by a central authority, but results from a natural human inclination to trade and exchange, because this leads to a general increase in wealth and living standards across society. After describing the natural tendency of markets towards a division of labor, Smith further describes that out of this natural tendency to trade, barter, and exchange, money evolves. It evolves over time to make markets more efficient, but we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here, so let's step a bit back to get a greater picture of this. Smith described the natural limitations of barter because, for example, if a shoemaker wants to get bread, but the baker already has all the shoes he needs, the shoemaker would need to have other products from other industries that the baker would potentially desire. But if the shoemaker has nothing that the baker desires, no exchange will take place. He says because of this limitation, there is a natural progression toward the adoption of a common medium of exchange. So finally, he states that the people in the economy must naturally progress towards a certain quantity of commodity that few people would refuse in exchange for the produce of their industry. What Smith is stating here is that because of the inconveniences of barter, the market naturally tilts or progresses towards commodities like gold and silver, or back in the day, salt, pepper, tobacco, anything else. Though few people would refuse these items because everyone knows that there will be someone somewhere who is interested in these commodities. So these are the basics from Adam Smith that we should know as we move forward. Why would Adam Smith come up with a story like that, even though there was no archaeological, anthropological proof that it ever happened that way? There's little to no evidence supporting the existence of large-scale barter societies in history. Let's turn our attention to ancient Mesopotamia, specifically the Sumerians. Contrary to the Barter Myth, the Sumerians had an intricate economic system that did not rely on large-scale barter. The Sumerians, living in city-states like Ur and Lagash, had centralized accounting systems in temples or palaces. They used the silver shekel as a unit of account, a form of virtual money. The shekel wasn't exchanged in everyday transactions. Instead, it served as a standard for recording debts and credits. But there is a big but here. The important thing to note is that the shekel did not emerge from the market itself, but the temples and palaces created that market, which is equal to the government. In my last video, I described the shekel in much more detail, so if you need a little bit of a recap, go back to the previous video and check that out. So let's get back to our central question. Why did Adam Smith make all this up? The simple answer is that he wanted to create the idea of free markets and natural markets. He wanted to establish the newfound discipline of economics as science, that the economy operated under the same laws as Sir Isaac Newton had recently identified about the physical world. Newton identified physical laws and represented God as the ruling force that operated to the benefit of humans, and after establishing the laws, let it run on its own. Smith tried to place the economy into a similar godly pursuit, where the self-interest of the people will lead to a just and efficient market, as if it was guided by an invisible hand. In Smith's book, Theory of Moral Sentiments, he states that the invisible hand is of divine providence, or literally the hand of God, which was then let run on its own in the market. Economists love this idea of a natural occurring market without state intervention, because they want to create the idea of free markets. Economists argue that property, money, and markets existed before political institutions and were the foundation of human society. Adam Smith was a proponent of John Locke's view that governments should limit themselves to the protection of property rights within society, of which I will take a quote from John Locke's Of the Ends of Political Society and Government. The great and chief, and therefore of man's uniting into commonwealths and putting themselves under government, is the preservation of their property. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, during a time when Spanish and Portuguese explorers were scouring the world for new sources of gold and silver. During their expeditions, no one reported the promised borderland. Most societies during their voyages were very well acquainted with the idea of money. Those who used money had it issued by their government. Money is in all cases a centrally controlled system. Others didn't see the need for money, as they used credit and debt within their economy. Jean-Michel Servet provided an alternative perspective, discussing that money was not a later development of barter, but that it had been a part of early economies in various forms. He suggested that money emerged due to human ingenuity and the need to facilitate trade, and not a response to the inefficiencies of barter. So I think that was a lot to process, and I would like to stop here and let you think about the implications that this lie created over the last centuries. The idea of free markets emerging from barter, completely distinct from government intervention, is a dream case that economists would wish for, but it is not true. Economists hate to accept that markets and money are not a natural phenomenon, but exists only under the rule of a government. So, in the next video, I will dive deeper into the barter myth and show you that debt and credit, and not money, is the oldest form of currency in human history. So, this was Chronicles of Economics, and I'm Kianosh. Stay curious, and I hope to see you next time in the next episode discussing the Barter Myth.